Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Spencer Heaton. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for ArborMetrix.
Tell us more about that.
I do. So ArborMetrix is a healthcare data analytics company, but I know a lot of companies say that, so probably a better way to understand it is that we're a technology-focused CRO that works exclusively in the clinical data registry and post-market surveillance space.
Tell some of our audience members exactly what that entails. How is that different?
Yeah, so what it means is, there's various healthcare stakeholders, whether they be payers, specialty societies, med device, or pharma manufacturers that need to aggregate real-world data, either for value-based care, for quality improvement initiatives, or simply to understand, the real-world safety and effectiveness of their products.
Where in the process would a typical manufacturer engage you?
So there's a lot of variability there. It depends. Obviously, at the time when your device is hitting the market is a reasonable place to start, or shortly before that. Oftentimes we find ourselves engaging with med device manufacturers when there are fortuitous events that lower the barriers between them and their data. The barriers to getting your data they're much lower than they have been historically. There's often the specialty societies with whom we frequently work, there's a couple dozen of them, often are sitting on data about your various products that you don't know about. So there are times when, irrespective of the life cycle of your product, it becomes a good idea to talk with us, with the societies, about alignment of interests with sharing that real-world data.
So that's a bit of news to me personally. Why wouldn't I have access to my own data?
Well, I guess you could call it your own data, but what I'm talking about here is where you think the physicians or surgeons using your devices are documenting the process of care in the electronic medical record. That's not something you have access to, but those EMRs are being opened up for various clinical data registries, and the data is being aggregated nationally and internationally. And that's often being done without the voice of industry, unfortunately, but there are ways that these societies are aligning together with the med device and pharma companies. This is also being done, we have a lot of inbound companies coming in saying, can we set up our own clinical data registry outside of the barriers of those that may be run by payers or specialty societies, because they do want to control the data themselves.
Okay. Is a trial a trial a trial?
It's not, actually. There are enough differences with the clinical data registry for post-market surveillance that there's some surprising nuances. If you set up a registry just to capture the real-world outcomes around any intervention, it can be done under what would be considered standard of care, meaning you don't need IRB approval, you don't even need patient consent. You're simply collecting the data to track safety and effectiveness and report it back to physicians. So these barriers that you often think of with a clinical trial and the costs, they kind of dissolve when you're doing it this way.
As Chief Medical Officer, you know a lot about this process, and there's competition out there. What sets your company aside from your competitors?
I think what sets us apart is the relationship that we have with the various healthcare stakeholders. Our company's been around since 2011, and we were born doing this type of work for specialty societies specifically. And so over time, over about 4 or 5 years, it became apparent that we're sitting on literally millions of cases of data for med device and pharma that kind of put us in a position where we could hold hands with one healthcare stakeholder, hold hands with the other, and kind of bring them together and see where there's alignment. And that's relatively unique.
Spencer Heaton, thank you very much.
Thank you.